Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Revenue Management Forum. My name is Baptist, and we're about to begin. Um, I see a lot of them joining in, so we'll start. Thank you so much for making time to be part of the Revenue Management Forum to listen in to this interesting discussion that we're going to have. This is the second virtual event we have for the year, and the fourth virtual event from the time we've started. Revenue Management Forum has been active for close to 7 years, and more information on that is available on our website, on Facebook. Pre-pandemic, we've conducted offline events as well in Pune, in Bombay, and in Delhi. To give you more information on what Revenue Management Forum is, it is more of a knowledge sharing community where we exchange ideas, and information on what's happening in the hospitality industry, which also includes technology partners and everything that's happening in the hotel industry. In part one of the Revenue Management Forum, which was Reset to Restart, what we had discussed was really focus around how revenue managers and everything to do with hotel revenue is going to come together in order to restart and to rethink about how to strategize and how to bring everything together. In the second episode, which is a continuation exactly 3 months later, so the first event we had on the 8th of September 2021, and our second event is now happening on the 8th of December, coincidentally. And what we're going to discuss here is more of a natural progression. What next after hotel revenue management? We wanted to look at various other components, right? So if we were to look at technology, economics, human resource, we just wanted to see all of these other ancillary streams, how they tie in with all that we have already discussed in part one. And therefore it's important for even these departments to go back to the drawing board, think how to reinvent themselves, try to do things a little differently, so that when you are actually trying to witness recovery, it's going to be a fully optimized one. Just a few ground rules on how we're going to move forward with this event. We're going to have a panel discussion. Karan Chawla is going to be the moderator who will ask questions to our panelists. If you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A button that's available on the top right-hand corner. It will be open as soon as we start the question answer round. If you have any question that you would want to direct specifically to any of our panelists, please mention the name and then ask your question, so that when Karan picks those questions up, he can then understand who it needs to be directed to, if it is, if it's directed to one particular panelist. We might not get a chance to answer all of the questions that you put in, but be rest assured that after the event is over, we are going to look at the questions and respond to you. If you're on social media and if you would like to post anything that's happening, please use the hashtag, which is hash RMF2K21, and post in your tweets or feeds there. This is a live event, so it will be recorded, and everyone who is attending this or has registered for this event will get the recording after the event is over. A quick, introduction of our panelists. As you know, we've got Mr. Dilip Puri, who is the founder and CEO at the Indian School of Hospitality. He is a passionate hotelier, believes in forward thinking, and is also, is a passionate hospitality education disruptor. His experience spans over 37 years, and has been with a lot of hotel brands like the Oberoi Hotels and Resorts, IHG, IHCL, Starwood, and Marriott. Moving on to Miss Payal Kulkarni. She is the Director of Human Resource at Park Hyatt Abu Dhabi Hotels and Villas. She has over 15 years of experience holding various positions in HR and training. And the hotel brands that she's worked with are Hyatt, Marriott, Ritz-Carlton, and Park Hyatt. Moving on to Manmeet Singh. He is the director of food and beverage at the Park Hotel with over 16 years in banqueting, catering, food and beverage. And the hotels that he's worked with are Holiday Inn, Sun and Sand, Grand Hyatt, Hyatt Regency, Westin, and the Park Hotels. Last but not the least, we have Mathew, who is the regional solutions engineer at Ideas Revenue Solution. He's got close to 14 years of experience and he's worked with the Hyatt Regency and has held various positions which are client facing at Ideas to help our clients with various products and solutions. So I welcome all of you on board today. Thank you so much for being part of this event, and I will now hand it over to Karan Chawla, who will then begin the questioning. So over to you, Karan.
Thank you, Baptist, and a warm welcome to all our panelists. Welcome on your debut at RM Forum here, and we're really great to have you here as we segue into different aspects of revenue management, moving away from rooms and looking into learning and development, human resources, and MICE and food and beverage as the other pillars that contribute towards total revenue management here. And having said that, I would like to jump straight in, right? And to put on the hot seat, I have Dilip. So Dilip, a question that a lot of us as students and moving forward as we move on to our careers is, do we have a plan in place to ensure that the learnings from the recent pandemic is something that needs to be implemented so that students are ready to tackle this change or deal with the challenges that may arise in the future?
My own sense is that I think academic institutions are perhaps a little better prepared to manage this challenge going forward than the industry itself. I think our industry is in a state of flux. I think the impact of the pandemic, the challenges which hospitality faced, pretty much is resulting in what my own senses will become a full-grown crisis going forward. Today, more and more hotels are reaching back to peak occupancy levels. At least the occupancies are coming back to pre-COVID levels, albeit rates are very depressed. That's clearly going to take time. What the hotels did during the pandemic was try and make themselves more efficient. The best way people think to get more efficient is cut your manpower and your labor costs, and suddenly you're more efficient. That would be great if you upskilled and provided those newer skills which are required based on changing customer expectations. I think that process has not yet happened. We today want to hire back, and I think it would be absolutely accurate to say that people don't want to come back to the industry. When you talk about this concept of the Great Resignation, I would rather call it the Great Migration. Resignations have happened, and then people have migrated out of our industry. Hoteliers are calling back their former employees who are giving them a finger up and saying, "Really, after how you treated us when the pandemic happened, you want us to come back?" After, thinking that working 12, 14 hours a day makes you a hardworking, loyal employee, you really think this young demographic of today is accepting of that? I think the real challenges lie in this major perception shift which is required by our industry. For too long, we've tried to be very proud of the fact that we work 12, 14 hours a day, so we are a very hardworking set of people. The reality is that today people want to do a better job in a less amount of time. Today you see a trend going across the Western world, reducing a 5-day week to a 4-day week, reducing a 40-hour week to a 36-hour week. Just yesterday, I think the UAE government has announced that they're moving their weekends and pretty much you'll be working a 4.5-day week. Right? Now, as an industry, if we sit back and do things the way we did, which is to say, yeah, long hours, but you'll have fun. I mean, really, I think in my generation, I would accept that because I understood concepts of job security, job loyalty. Today's demographic simply doesn't. And it is incumbent upon us as employers to recognize that, not that generation of new workers. And until that shift is made, I fear we are heading into a very significant humanitarian crisis as far as talent goes for our industry. When I talk about a hotel school, either which way, if I use the example of my own institution, we don't see more than 35% students maximum opting to be in the hotel industry when they graduate. And this is not a new trend, by the way. This trend existed even before COVID. When hotel companies went to recruit in my Starwood days, when we go to recruit, the best students got picked up by luxury retail, got picked up by e-commerce companies, got picked up by people who paid them higher salaries, give them regular, meaningful jobs, working a limited amount of time. Now, what would prompt that kind of a person to say, no, no, but I'm going to go and work in hotels? We have to change our persona, our profile, the way we are perceived by the working, the young workforce which is coming in. Otherwise, I'm very fearful at what's going to happen with the industry going forward. But we have an opportunity right now.
Absolutely. And I'm actually glad you brought up the UAE example. That is something I also had, where from my times where we had a 6-day work week when I was in the hotel industry, to it moving on to every alternate weekends you get a 2-day off, versus now to a 5-day and a 4.5-day. And to something else that I can take back from here is the spiral effect is what I would call it, right? An employer expecting his employee to work as hard or as long as he did, and then the same thing coming down. It needs to break the chain somewhere, like you said. And having said that, I'll now move the onus to Payal, right? Because from the industry right within, Payal, what would you say? Could the hotels have done something different or better to manage furloughs and rifts? Right there.
Um, if I have to be absolutely blunt about it, maybe today, 2 years from probably when the pandemic hit us, and April last year is when we started seeing majority of the impact on us. Yes, today I can go back and think of 10 different ways of what I could have done differently. But at that point of time, when it was so unprecedented for all of us, and something that none of us have dealt with in the past, I'm at this point of time talking more from the UAE market point of view. I have heard of different examples of what of things being done probably back home in India. I think there could have been a lot many different ways of dealing with it. But at that point of time, to be fair, we did everything that we could to protect our people. Like I said, I'm restricting my experience to what I went through, or what particularly the two Emirates, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, from what I understand, they were very well organized. We did not start retrenching or furloughing people right from April. We waited all the way till good September is when we started understanding when there is because April to about July is summers in UAE, and every year we are prepared to not having business at that part. But surprisingly, because most of the world was closed, UAE within itself survived really well. Our local clientele kept coming. You would be surprised, the month of May, when the Ramadan finished, the hotel did better than pre-COVID times. So there are varied examples. And if I'm being honest, each hotel, each location had a different way to deal with the pandemic. There was not a cookie cut solution for this. And I don't think it is fair for any one of us to beat ourselves on how we reacted to it. Each organization, I think, did have the priority of protecting its people. I do agree with Mr. Puri that, for probably as a division, maybe as hospitality, as an industry, we might not be attractive to the students today. But let's be honest, that has been the case for the last 10 plus years. I remember when I was pre-opening the Ritz-Carlton Pune, or I was pre-opening the Sheraton, the first Starwood branded hotel to open under Marriott banner. And we went to multiple colleges and we realized the best of the talent, like he said, was not keen. I mean, here I see Chanel's and Louis Vuitton's. These are the organizations who are taking from the service industry. So to answer your question, yes, we could have done things differently, but I still feel that we did everything that we could take care of them. We provided insurance, shelter, and food to our employees who were stuck with us and could not go back home. Even some of them who were furloughed, we took care of them for up to about 3 to 5 months, which was not easy, So to be fair, I think we did our best.
True. Well, yes, that is correct. But one way to put it is one organization doesn't create a template for the entire industry, right? Because we know that there's also an uglier side, for a lack of a better word, where people have not had the advantages that you've provided in terms of packages and relief for the 3 to 5 months and insurance and so forth. And the way Dilip put it, right, the great resignation to the great migration, and staying on with you again, Payal, is do you foresee a challenge that would now have an impact with occupancies rising, but ADR is not rising as much, but occupancy, yes, rising, and with the view that the furloughed workforce would now rather shift industry, like you said, right? Luxury retail or in hospitality elsewhere, but not back to hotels. Do you foresee that being a challenge, or no, there's a lot of fish in the market there already available?
There would be a challenge for sure to get back the same trained colleagues, if I have to answer right. I might not get my same people back. Yes, they have probably decided not to come back. A lot of our colleagues also decided to open their own businesses. They feel it was a push that they required for years to start something on their own. But if I take a reference, I was recently in touch with Guillaume and I was in touch with École Hôtelière Lausanne as well. They have a batch of close to 2,000 students waiting to be placed and extremely keen to join the industry. So at one side, I do agree that we do have a problem of getting probably trained staff. If I have to give you another example, in UAE, the concern that we are facing at this point of time is not losing people to hotels, is losing to Expo. Expo 2020 took majority of our people at the cost that hotels could never imagine paying. So there are multiple issues that we are facing in getting trained staff or skilled staff. Sure enough, it's a problem. The pandemic definitely has added fuel to the fire. But this industry is known to rebound. And the way the occupancies have picked up, the way, rather I would say after the pandemic, people are keen on going on vacations. And what better place than good resorts? Sure enough, business hotels are going to have a much larger issue at hand as against probably resorts. That's where your ADRs are going to be majorly affected as against probably resorts. But like you said, there are plenty to be hired. It will be an effort to get them back on the expectation or the service level or the excellence that we desire from them. But I don't think we should have a problem in getting back on our feet. And I would say that this great attrition can become a great attraction if we treat our people right.
Absolutely. At the end, it does come down to be core culture of being employee centric at the end, right? And it's a good point that you raised, that getting them back not being the issue, but the issue being the void being left by the experience that has stepped away, right? And to tie into that point as well as to what Dilip did say earlier is, with even the hospitality industry, in terms a lot of people moving to luxury retail or per se other streams, but not into the hotels. A question that I would ask Dilip is, do you think that there's an increasing requirement of the industry-based technology certification, right? Exposures into certified PMS SME or an RMS SME or a distribution SME that would then get help somebody like a Payal who's looking out for talented resources, and B, encouraging people who are working or graduating out of a hospitality school to pursue core hospitality and not luxury retail?
Yeah, I think The cornerstone of good hospitality education really is to develop transferable skills in these young students. Skills which they can carry into any job which is customer centered. When you look at the global curriculums, Payal mentioned DHL, the great schools. In their curriculums and their pedagogy, the core hospitality skills are pretty much taught and done away with in the first year. After that, a program almost morphs into a BBA, studying management subjects, doing business projects, interning with companies in roles beyond operations. Now, obviously, then you're setting that student up to work in a multitude of sectors. Now, then you as a hotel industry are competing with many other sectors. I made the point that he lost people to the expo. I mean, who would have imagined, you might have lost an employee to the luxury hotel next door, which is just open, but to lose it to a completely different sector. This is what I think we have failed to recognize as an industry. We have traditionally been a very insular industry. You start your career in hotels, you end your career in hotels. Pretty much cradle to grave, right? That's how it used to be. Today, the mobility which these young people have, that loyalty, security, longevity of a job, it's not in their lexicon. We have to recognize that. The curriculums which are being taught, and you asked a good question earlier, that are we preparing students for these changes? That is exactly the reality of what's happening. So today, we are, for example, building capability for greater technology enablement. When you tell a student that 2 years ago, the mantra used to be personalized service in a luxury hotel, today that same luxury hotel markets itself saying contactless check-in.
Yeah.
How can I compete to show you the fewest number of employees, whereas 2 years ago, if the whole shebang of the Aarti, Tika, Garland, welcome drink, escort, elevator pitch didn't happen, then you weren't providing the service, right? Now, that's a migration which is a natural outcome of a process. The question is that the employees which are currently in the industry and who were lucky enough not to get fired, have they been reskilled, upskilled, or allowed to acquire these new skills? I mean, to enable technology, which means you have to be comfortable using it, deliver what your customers expect. You have to have the ability to understand that customers' expectations have changed. Customers' behavior has changed. Where a customer looked and said, does the Park Hyatt Abu Dhabi have Prete linen or does it have short size of glasses? They are not looking at that today. Are you a clean, sanitized, hygienic hotel, maintaining all of this? That's what customers are looking for. So when their behavior changes, the employees have to adjust accordingly. They need to acquire these skills. To simply say that, hey, you got to become multi-skilled between today and tomorrow, you got to multitask between today and tomorrow. Really? I mean, how are you expecting these guys to deliver? And then on top of that, when we shed employees during the pandemic, today when you're operating with half the workforce and your management has told you that you're not getting any more employees, it means one guy is doing the job of two people without any additional skills. So who are we trying to fool in terms of continuing to try and be attractive to the industry? We have to pay more and we have to make them work less. You have to make them work hard by making them work smart, not by putting in 12, 14-hour days. If the industry can come together and change this perception towards the talent force, whether it's young students coming out who want to join the hotel industry, or whether it is people who left the industry and now say, you know what, the industry is recognized this fact. They're going to treat me better. I'm going to work human hours. I'm going to get paid better. I'm going to get more time with my family. If you're able to build these perceptions into the market, then yes, we can rebound back and become a very attractive employer because the industry has so much going for it. It's global industry, the mobility, migration of people. So many Indians work in the Middle East. I mean, we got examples right here. This is what we need to make big attractors and not, sit down and saying, Hard work never killed anyone. Come and work hard. You're young. You should work hard. This generation simply will not accept that. It's a generation of consumption, of entitlement, of very independent thinking. And if we think that they think the way we were at 18, then God forbid, if that's the way our leadership is going to think, then this industry is not going anywhere. We'll have an even greater challenge. I cannot emphasize this fact more, and this is an appropriate forum. When you think of revenue management, you said you're trying to move away from rooms. Even when it came to employees, the first thing, and pardon me, Payal, but a director of HR, what's your cost per employee? I don't think you've been asked what's the revenue per employee. You're always asked how much does each employee cost you? And if you just make that simple paradigm shift to say how much of revenue can an employee earn you?
Absolutely.
That itself is a mindset change our industry needs to go through if we have to attract more talent.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting thing that you just said. We've always talked about revenue per rooms or asset management, but revenue per resource, I don't think so. It's something thought of or coined within our industry, but something that Dilip, you strongly feel about that it needs to, and it's the need of the hour as well to be employee centric. And what I want to do here is tie in technology, right? If you need to be one person wearing multiple hats there, and you can be able to jump from one vertical to another vertical. I think technology definitely helps you there. And having said that, I'll probably get Murphy up on the board here. Is Murphy, how can you think technology works to solve the needs of hoteliers, especially having heard what's just been said and given the current atmosphere overall, right? How can technology help hoteliers in general then?
Yeah. So let me answer that question. But before that, there's something that I've heard from both Payal and Dilip, right? Very much in sync with what my thoughts are as well. But, Dilip, what you just mentioned about the cornerstone, that's something that I totally relate to, right? I've been from the hotel industry and back into technology now. And I keep saying this to all of the industry people that I meet, right? Once a hotelier, I will always be one, whether I'm out of the hotels as well, right? See cornerstone. Now, coming back to your question, Karan, right? That answer, my dear friend, is going to be a very long answer, right? If you ask me about technology. But the answer to it also lies in your question in some ways. If you speak of words, right? Automation, efficiency with the constrained resources, the topic that we just touched upon, and profitability, right? Revenue per individual or per resource that we just again spoke about are the constant phrases that I've been now hearing when I speak to hoteliers across the country and across the globe as well. Now, there is more willingness now to use analytics to drive decisions. Now, this is significantly different from, let's say, a few years back when the analytics was more to evaluate a marketing campaign, as opposed to, the approach would have been right at what rate, at what booking window should I be running this new promotion so that I don't displace my existing business, from where it lies. Now, this is just one of the examples, Karan, wherein we see more and more hotels leveraging analytics to gain advantage in a very, or let's say, in a highly competitive environment that we are in, right? We all of are chasing a smaller pie as we speak about now. The complexity of the technology is a moving variable though, right? So it's important now to tie the uses of technology that we speak about with the current times. The secret, I keep saying this, the secret to success is not just reacting to the trends in the market, but also being able to proactively understand, or let's say forecast what the trend could be based upon the available data that you have. But then we've also realized, right, over the last couple of years, that rooms is not everything, or for a hotel, right? Hotels now have more importance to F&B and even something like guest count forecasting, right? The resident versus the non-resident guest. That's a leverage that now most of the hotels are trying and understand and put their leverage upon. Now, I'm sure Manmeet here will agree with me when I say that there are many hotels now, or rather many executives and leaders in the hotels now who are looking at getting intel from an F&B data point as just an example, right? I would kind of summarize this by saying that the technology companies have also gone rather very aggressive over the last year or so with innovations to kind of meet the changing demands from not just the revenue manager at the hotel, but also the F&B manager, or let's say the the events manager, and maybe your spa manager, right? So that's in a summary or nutshell for you there, Karan.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Even I agree that yes, I think hotel owners and boards are tapping into every possible resource and avenue to bring in unique revenue in or certain revenue. And in the last 19 months, probably a non-resident is way more valuable than a resident because there are hardly any residents in there, right? And with that, Manmeet, right? With a lot of people going radical moves and something out of the box, I know a lot of establishments have gone ahead and created cloud kitchen concepts, right, to deliver food during the pandemic, and they've become like a standalone vertical in its own case sometimes, in some cases, right? Do you have any examples of that, of your own opinion? Do you see this expanding at the speed as we saw in the last 19 months in the years to come, or do you think that this will now all die back down to what regular hotels would just cater to people walking in, and all of these out of the box ideas will go back into a box and kept away?
I have a opinion that these kinds of ideas, which cloud kitchen, which happened during the lockdown specifically, and it was the area where everybody focused on, because during the lockdown there was not much except for deliveries that was allowed, and that is where everybody focused to create more revenues, to keep relevant with the times, and ensure that you get in some revenues into the kitty so that you could survive, because not everybody retrenched their staff. Some kept them on, some made them utilize. Like myself, I was in lockdown in the hotel doing home deliveries for the from the hotel to lot of avenues. It was not just making revenue out of online deliveries, delivering to homes of people, but we also did charities for organization, where organizers wanted to do charity events, and we would do dal khichdi for them at a very nominal price, and we made money out of that as well. So yes, these ideas were came up, and I think it is gonna in future gonna be survival of the fittest. The people who would be able to keep the quality and the consistency up will be able to maintain it and go forward with it. But I don't think so it will become a mainstream cloud kitchen. It will still be kind of a hybrid, where some brands which have made them popular, are very popular, would survive, and the rest would obviously will look at doing other things that they can possibly do.
Absolutely. So I do know, like, for example, Marriott has their delivery on wheels. So they set up a food truck in Pune that does the rounds, and that's been like their mainstream on for the last 2 years. So I think everyone's now looking at revenue aspect, but not just departments, but I think they're looking at optimizing by per square inch, per square feet, right? Let's try and get every aspect of a hotel, all your, let it be a truck, or let it be a swimming pool, or let it be a spa. We want money coming in from all aspects and all angles. And having said that, is something that moves on to, you have revenue, you have money, you have resources, right? And then no layoffs and no furloughs brings me to what Payal coined again. We have a lot of coins here. Retention becomes the great attraction. Okay, so with retaining talent now more difficult, because with all the furloughs and the void that has been left, and now a lot of people getting better opportunities in and across the industry, right, has led to a lot of attrition and a lot of hiring at many places. How are you, or how are hotels managing this? I know it's become difficult, like you said. Yes, there's a lot of resources there, but you're losing experienced ones. You may also find more experienced ones because somebody's there from somewhere else. But how difficult do you think this is for hotels to manage this?
So hotels,
please go ahead.
Is this for Payal or Manmeet?
It's for Payal, but if you, yes, I'm open to you.
I would love to hear your thoughts.
No, I just wanted to say from the hotel perspective, this one man's loss is other man's win is what we faced here. We got a lot of employees who came back from Dubai, who came down during lockdown, and then they decided that they don't want to go back. And we got a lot of trained employees out of this situation. And yes, we did lose a lot of our also old employees for a better prospects to other hotels and other areas. Some started their own business, as Payal rightly said. I had a chef who was who started his own health nutrient business, and he's now doing very well with that because he also focused during lockdown to create healthy food for people who were sitting at home and couldn't do much work around. So this was the trend that we got. We gained out of the Dubai situation because a lot of people came back and said we want to work back. So we got a lot of employees who have worked in Dubai and working with us.
Karan, just to answer this in terms of retention, what I personally feel, it's easier said than done. But what we need to do, and some of my thoughts may be influenced by a report of McKinsey that I had recently read, is we have to make sure that it is not a transaction. Today's generation, and Mr. Puri has very well highlighted, is they're not going to take something just for the heck of saying, oh, we are taking care of you, or oh, this is going to be fun, or this is what we provide. They genuinely want to see what are the efforts being implemented. To share an example, just right after the pandemic, early this year, I connected with close to about 400 of our employees to talk to them to understand what is it that they have missed and how can we help them now get out of the pandemic mode and start preparing for what's happening. You'll be surprised because the question which I assumed and traditionally I thought would be the most common question is, when are we going to get our increment? When are you going to probably pay us our bonus, or things like that? And kid me not, there was not a single question like that. They were really worried about what's happening about developing them. What is the next in career for them? Today's generation is very, very different from what we traditionally know as hoteliers. They come here to probably make a career. If they're not getting out of them, they are not here to waste time. They don't care whether it's a Hyatt or a Marriott or a Hilton or an Oberoi. They want somebody who is investing in them because they have invested in that kind of education. The education today, earlier also wasn't cheap, but today is not cheap. They're spending a lot of time when they even come for internships. I remember during our times, internships were all about getting banquet casuals, right? That was our understanding. But that's not the case. So when we talk about ensuring that we have to retain, and it's very, very critical now to understand that if we want to survive from what we have seen, and we still don't know whether it's going to go away or not, the industry is still facing a lot of volatile market, right? So if we want to survive and sail through this, we have to take care of the resources that we have. And at this point of time, I don't care whether my material is going to come from different countries or not, but I care genuinely about whether my staff is going to be with me or not. So we have to invest time in them. We have to ask them, what is it that they want, and work around it. An organization which is going to work on the emotional quotient is the one who's going to survive this.
Absolutely.
Can I make a comment, please?
Definitely.
So I want to offer a contrarian view, if you like, what Payal has just said. So, interns, you mentioned interns, and it's the biggest thing for us. We are an institution, our students work. So here's how it's playing out in reality. So occupancies are coming back, as we said. Hotels are limited in their full-time staff because they've become more efficient. They can't hire more people between the owner of the operator and the hire. But there is a banquet function for 1,000 people. What are they doing? They are getting from the institutions interns, and they are putting these interns into full-time equivalent jobs because they can't hire full-time people. Either they don't have the budgets to hire, or they're just not available. I think the latter. So what's happening is that these students now from institutions are going for their internships and are being flogged and slogged for 14 hours a day, doing exactly what Payal you mentioned 20 years ago, interns laying off backward casuals. That is the reality today. I'm not blaming the hotels for it. Hotels don't have a choice. They're getting back business. They don't have talent coming back. They don't know where to get the workforce from. Let's take trainees. So you're taking these interns, zero training. They're going there to learn. They're not going there to work. And you're not paying them because they're interns. You're in no way acknowledging them also that, thank you for. And you expect these same guys to want to come back and join our industry. I mean, come on. Let's take reality here. But you are in a situation where you're forced to take interns because you can't get people. Your hotels are already busy. You'll end up working these interns for 15 hours a day. Yet you expect you to be attractive to these interns that when they finish their graduation, they'll come running and saying, yeah, we want to join and get hammered the same. It simply is not going to work that way. I think, general managers of hotels have to be very sensitive. And I can tell you one more thing. This young generation, they don't mind working hard. Somebody has to acknowledge them.
Yes.
Somebody has to recognize them. Somebody has to incentivize them. Somebody has to I would imagine somebody like Payal would be making these efforts as the HR director. These are people who are my future talent. I need to spend time and make them believe that while you're working hard, we'll make sure you learn also. We respect and acknowledge and thank you for what you do. But we're not even doing that. We're just taking it for granted, saying you come here as a trainee, intern, industry trainee, and go into housekeeping or banquets and work 12 hours a day and listen to whatever anybody tells you. What is this? Is a recipe for disaster. And the strangest thing is hospitality training, hospitality education builds, as I said, these transferables. We have become such an insular industry. Our people don't go out, and so we don't attract people in. I have a very simple question. It's a skill versus attitude game. I come from the Oberoi school. When I was hired, 1984, I'm going back 37 years ago. When we asked Mr. Oberoi this question that, us as a group, because in those days, he didn't like taking people from IHM, people from regular colleges, because he said, you know what, I teach you hospitality. The skill part I can teach. What I can't teach you is attitude. You have to bring that attitude from your upbringing, family, values, all those things, right? And I teach you the skills. Similarly, when you look at education today, the skill part, they will learn very easily. The hard skills are the easiest. It's the soft skills. How do you teach these young people emotional intelligence and empathy, and create that executive presence about them, communication skills? These are lifelong learning skills, right? We are imparting these skills, so these students are now available and accessible. So many more industries. I think that is the perspective hotels are. Not that they're shy from work. Acknowledge them, recognize them, incentivize them, catch them young. In the Western world, interns are sought after because they said we will catch them young to train them so that they'll come back and work for us when they graduate. I don't think we do that as an industry here. We look at them as nothing but cheap labor. It was kind of going away, and then the pandemic has brought that right. And we need to have a solution for that.
Absolutely. I would agree. And I guess that is what would eventually have an issue where good talent is not being diverted towards hotels and this industry because of its current work nature, right? And especially given the pandemic and the employment impact it has had is so we have good resources being diverted to different verticals. So having said that, and there's a pool of talent and manpower now available, right? Because of the attrition that we have, because of the furloughs coming back, but available at other places. And this will be a question more for Payal. Again, do you think the selection process has changed or had to be reinvented with questions now related to handling of pressure, multitasking, like Dilip said, right? A person wearing multiple hats, being able to be able to handle 2 jobs and skilled for it, as those are becoming more imperative, how has your entire process of selection transpired?
So to some fact, yes, these things definitely would be an influence to our selection process now. And Karan, they would be more focused when I would be hiring probably a manager. Probably at an entry level, I might not be so concerned about whether my chef or a steward would be able to handle pressure because, we know how the industry has prepared us to handle stress and pressure to some extent. So I wouldn't have those questions for them. But sure enough, today when I would be hiring managers, I definitely would like to know how they have behaved throughout the pandemic. Any which is most of the organizations nowadays have moved towards more behavioral questionings, rather than skill oriented. And I think this has been a belief in the industry for some time now, wherein we don't hire for so much for the skill, but rather than for the attitude. So for the managers, if I know that they have taken the right steps or were able to get repurposed during the pandemic. Let me give you an example. During the pandemic, most of my sales staff was working in reservation or probably was assisting in front office. So if I'm hiring somebody in one of those departments and I do ask them what happened when they were working in their hotels during the pandemic, unless they were let go, those examples definitely would help me. Again, understanding how they were able to be resilient throughout. I do not at any point intend to say that somebody who probably was not strong enough to mentally deal with the impact of the pandemic is not fit to work. Each one of us have different ways to deal, and it's absolutely fine. But how they were able to handle themselves out of it, were they able to understand that their well-being was not the best and they probably needed to seek help? Or they took different steps so that they could come back and start working. I think these insights would definitely help me get the right people on board.
Sure, but wouldn't you feel also looking for these at the entry level post, because if they can be multifaceted while they're young, while they're learning and being groomed, so you will rather groom in-house rather than import talent, right? Eventually, then that's one success that's being built up within yourself. Then you don't need to rewind the whole process. So when he leaves, I need to look for somebody now who can do 2 jobs at one go because I didn't pay attention at him when I hired him early on.
So yes, to some extent, sure enough, like I'll give you an example of our waiters. Earlier, we used to hire waiter as per our restaurants. I mean, if it was a multi all-day dining or probably a particular, theme of restaurant. So depending on that is what we would hire. But when we hire now, we tell them that today you could be working probably in the best of the restaurants, or tomorrow you could be working in the breakfast service, or later on you could also have to go and assist at the pool. Sure enough. Our F&B staff is also groomed because we have villas and we have a lot of VVIPs coming. They're all groomed to take up butler service. Front office and concierge staff, rather we have stopped saying that there's going to be a concierge and a front office and guest relations, guest services. Now we just tell them you are our front office team and you would have to be multifaceted and you could probably be placed in any of the areas. So sure enough, there is a lot of highlight on that, and we want to make sure that we can repurpose them, but kind of not at the cost of delivery. We still want to excel in providing the right service. In the process of multitasking people, if I'm not able to give the luxury that is anticipated by my guest, then I'm losing out even more.
Absolutely, no, agreed. You wouldn't want to differ on your quality or have a drop down there, just primarily looking at getting one person to do 2 jobs. And that's what even Dilip said, like, it's good to be multitasking, but it's a fine line between being multitasking and expected to do all the things that you can do just because you can do it, right? Yeah, no, I completely agree. And having said that, I'll probably now get back to Manmeet and F&B, right? A lot of multitasking there, but one thing that I'd like to bring up is, do you think that F&B has manifested itself as a primary revenue earning department till date or in the days to come? And do you think that owners and GMs are now decision makers are more receptive and careful when they're planning and allocating budgets, especially for F&B now? Manmeet, you're on mute, I suppose.
Yeah. So F&B and rooms were always focused based on the hotel, because some hotel had huge F&Bs versus rooms, and some hotel had more rooms focused than F&B. During the pandemic, yes, F&B was the focus, because that is the only place that revenues were being able to come through and focused on. Events initially was a challenge because of the number of restrictions in terms of number of people allowed to do events and things like that. But there was a lot of these sessions where we would do, like our session, which is live right now, were done through conference rooms and boardrooms. So those were the revenue earning centers. There has been a change, a drastic change in focus on F&B after the pandemic, because that's where the extra revenue or the more revenue generation could come in. Technology has taken a role in that also, because efficiency in terms of there were a lot of changes that were done. Like, for example, there was in-room dining QR codes which guests could order directly. So order taker loads were reduced, and orders would come directly to the kitchens. So those kind of technology helped emphasize and increase profitability in F&B. Even space-wise also, there was focus on hygiene and sanitation, contactless. So earlier, if you had a wedding function of, let's say, 100 people, you would have at least 8 to 9 staff rotating snacks. Those were taken out because there was a focus on no contact with the guests. So starters were pre-placed on the buffets or on the tables for guests to use. So that kind of efficiency was brought in. Focus was more in F&B was more towards generating revenue and increasing profitability. Yes, owners have now started investing on F&B in terms of increasing, because the number of restrictions of people that was put in place enhanced the number of venues that you could offer in the hotel. Earlier, if you had a 200 pax wedding function, you could only give the banquet space. Now with the 50 pax restriction, we could use a lot of spaces, restaurants, poolsides, terraces. So that kind of focus was brought in, and that is where we invested, where we could use venues as a multiple flexibility so that revenues could be generated.
Absolutely. So yeah, so what I gather from you is, yes, F&B was the onus because rooms wasn't the focus in the last 19 months, but it's yet primarily that the rooms will come back into focus moving forward as normalcy comes into place, and whatever the new normal looks like. We are yet in a volatile period now with new variants cropping up here and there. So having said that, I'll get Mathew back up on the board. Okay, how can hoteliers identify and monetize new revenue streams from varied departments, right? Other than focusing on room revenue per se. And would you have some examples that you know of that hotels have adopted unusual but successful revenue optimization models in the last 19 months?
Yeah, and Karan, I'm smiling because there's an example about the unusual one that I'll come to towards the end of it. But then, needless to say, right, the answer lies again would be varying from hotel to hotel, right? I've spoken to hoteliers who have been focused on their operational streams to tap into their existing expertise, like how Manmeet mentioned, right, and brand awareness in the market for the corresponding services that they were offering pre-pandemic days as well, right? So right on top, again, as Manmeet alluded, is F&B, and followed by a mix of catering, curated private events, right? Just yesterday, I was reading a report which said that the number of inquiries and the registrations for for events which are under 25 people have exponentially increased, and that's over the next 3 quarters that constitutes about 65% of the events business, right? So curated private events, like I was mentioning, and then laundry, just to name a few there. Now, a glance through some of those many recent marketing campaigns that you would have seen online as well, which would highlight the strategic initiatives or the innovative campaigns that the bigger chains and the smaller chains and the boutique hotels have started off, are all around the experiences, and you would have seen so many of them, right? While F&B has clearly outperformed expectations by many, for the hotels which were not really considered on F&B as well. One of the most creative ones, right? This is where the smile on my face is, right? One of the most creative ones that I've come across is something that one of our panelists spoke about during our last event, right? Is about using a hotel pool for fish farming in Kerala, right? Probably not sustainable, obviously not, maybe, but then there is willingness to experiment and and to explore is admirable. And that just goes back to the point what Payal mentioned about being resilient, right? No matter what, we'll come back out of this downturn that we've seen.
Thank you, Murphy. I know this was a very unique one that I had heard myself. And the thing that came up in my mind was a swimming pool koi pond. So, well, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. And I know we're about to hit the hour, but I have a couple of juicy questions that I want to get through before I call it a wrap. And this is primarily now with what Manmeet and with what Murphy said, we're moving towards normalcy. We're moving towards back on getting occupancies. ADR is not right up there. So Payal, okay, how are organizations planning to scale up for increased occupancy in the coming months and workforce? And the main point here, and the word to put onus on, is the budget perspective, right? Eventually, it really comes down to the budget. It's not the hiring, but it's about the money to give out and the ability to do that right in the center of your year that you've already budgeted for. So what's the plan around there?
Well, the budgets were made as a paper exercise. Nobody really knew. When we did the budget for 2020, we didn't know the pandemic was going to happen. When we did the budget for 2021, we didn't know how we were going to survive it. And I honestly do not know how we're going to do in 2022 as well. Each month comes as a surprise. And yes, the tone of this call also started with Mr. Puri clearly saying that we are all helter-skelter. Yes, today I think we've got our breath together. We feel more collected. We feel more prepared. When Omicron came as a variant, we didn't get all flustered about it, and we were pretty calm and composed as to what would probably come our way. So budget definitely is a paper exercise, and I think today organizations from company point of view or even ownership point of view, everybody is very open-minded with what expenses will come our way. So a simple calculation is, if you have the business on the books, or if you even forecast it, then you get the manning ready. Now, I'll give you an example. In India, recruiting is very easy. The only time period that I have to consider to get a person on board is probably the notice period. For me to get a waiter on board, my lead time is 3 months. The reason being the whole process of legal, wherein I have to get the CID approval, their visa, and then once I have the CID approval is when the person puts in the notice period. So we really have to go back and plan. So yes, the buy is the same that we have to hire from. Sure enough, everybody would want to get the best of the talent. But again, we shouldn't be losing our sight of what we want to achieve in the long run, and not just fill in the gaps by getting in people for the heck of it. Yes, the hotels will have to do that. If I have an events lined up in the hotel right now and we are literally in a sold out position, sure enough, I'm going to fill it up with interns from colleges, or I'm going to get casuals from agencies, but I still need to hire right. Our plan is to make sure that we are hiring the right people who we can sustain. Today, I cannot go back to my same manning number that I had probably pre-pandemic phase, though my occupancies are getting there, because I don't know when it's going to fall down flat on my face, right?
True, but I believe I look at it as two ways, right? One is, yes, you don't know what's going to happen next, but another way to look at it is hotels have got used to reducing their bottom line, right? Lesser staff means lesser bottom line, and we're yet providing the same level of service contactless. So they don't want to increase manpower because they've done it. Occupancies are rising, ADRs aren't rising as much, like I've said, through and through. So they've reached a comfort zone where, yes, what I needed a workforce to say 100 before, I can now do in 50 or 65. So let me continue with that. So I think there are two sides of that coin right there.
In fact, Karan, let me tell you, after the pandemic, I cannot function with less manning because of the hygiene rules that I have to maintain. In fact, I need more staff. The reason being, in this part of the world, we haven't opened our buffets. A guest cannot come to the buffet and serve himself or herself. My staff has to be behind and serving. So yes, we might be an all-day dining doing breakfast for close to 300 to 400 packs, but I need more staff now because if the guest would need fruit or egg or whatever, everything has to be served to him or her on the table. And as per the Department of Culture and Tourism here, the kind of and the kind of audits that we go through and surprise visits, if I do not sanitize the table at the level that they want, I'm going to be fined or shut down drastically. So to make up to these demands, in fact, I need more people. So I cannot cut down on the bottom line in cutting down staff. I probably have to look at other creative ways to probably manage my bottom line.
True. Well, there's a silver lining, at least for all the students and the employees and the people who are hearing this. So yes, Dubai is hiring. They're hiring on full swing. So yes, you could look out there. The other aspect, and I know Dilip, you'll definitely have a say in this, or you'll want to say in this. So I'm going to come back to you, but I'll yet stick on with Payal here for another minute, and then I'll move this question to you as well. Is strategies that have worked better for work-life balance and employee experience?
Well, that's a brilliant question. I was laughing my guts out when I was reading that earlier. Sure.
So yeah, your thoughts.
We have to be realistic about it. Okay, something that I have believed it in the past and I have been able to implement in the hotels that I have functioned with is, as far as possible, do things which are feasible. If I'm going to say that a person is going to probably, now we are a 5-day working, however, we have to squeeze in 48 hours. So technically we work 10 hours, 9.6 hours per day, so that my colleagues enjoy 2 days off per week. So sure enough, we try to make sure, because the overtime rules are much more stricter in UAE as against probably in India. We have found creative solutions around that as well. But what we need to do is see what we can do. There are days when there is work, so let them work extra. But then there are those days when your restaurant is probably not that busy, or there are not so many check-in. Please do not hold your hands back in saying, you know what, leave early today. Take your time off. At that point of time, I think the old HRs have to stop looking at what was the sign in and the sign out, how many hours did the employee put in, because there are days when the employee has gone above and beyond and putting extra hours. So I think, again, going back to what Mr. Puri said, a mindset change has to happen. Another big thing which I'm a big advocate of is stop these break shifts. I think it's inhumane to do that to anybody. And being a copy leadership trainee myself, or being from operations, I know how it can hamper your health. You cannot say that a person can just about work those many hours and go. But if a person is on a day off or is on a vacation, let's not disturb them. If you have given somebody a vacation, don't cancel it. If somebody has requested for a day off, give it. So these are ways in which you can manage work-life balance. And rather than planning multiple events in the organization, which HRs have started becoming more event managers, let's stop doing that. Let's do things which are more realistic and invest the right amount of time for our people.
True. Thank you. And Dilip, would you have anything to add on to this? Because you're on the other end. I know you're very, very passionate towards breaking the chain of the slogging that's happening in the industry. And yes, so any thoughts from you on this? We're sorry, your audio is a little intermittent.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes, crystal clear. Thank you.
So when you mentioned buffet and by your protocols now, guests can't go and they have to be served. So think about what we spoke earlier about technology enablement. So many restaurants have started doing this, where you have your barcode and you just click on your phone and you get a menu. So thinking about a buffet, each day at your breakfast buffet, your barcode reader is there. Guest comes, sits on his table, clicks on that, gets to know everything that's there on the buffet. Those items have been photographed that morning if there are any changed items, and he looks at what he wants to order. He clicks it on a tablet there. The messaging comes behind the counter, and that food is put into a plate and provided to him. That makes the process much simpler. You've genuinely used technology to make the service more efficient. He doesn't have to go to the buffet and nobody has to come to the table. And you're not doing it with any more staff. So that's perhaps one of the ways in which we should be seeing technology enable more efficiencies in food and beverage service. When it comes to the work-life balance thing, many years ago, I gave up on the concept of work-life balance. I would rather call it work-life integration. You have to find within the life you're living time for work, and within the work you're doing, time to have a life as well. So it's not about saying that work 10 hours and go home and do what you want. That's trying to balance the time. I think going forward, what's going to happen is that we will, as it is, we do it. When we're going on holidays, we still have our mobile devices with us. We still carry our tablets and we still carry. So it's not as if we're completely, gone from the world because I'm on holiday. So you are at the background, but it's there, but you're having. Similarly, when you, are working, the way in which the environment ecosystem can be created in your workplace is such that it doesn't feel that, man, this is such a chore and I've got to do 12 hours of this. It also allows you to live a little life during that time you're at work. For example, I totally agree. I mean, broken shift should have gone away 20 years ago. And I'm surprised that businesses and hotels still even have that practice in place, because it's just ridiculous. Forget about it being inhuman, it's just inefficient. You're decreasing productivity. So think about the concept of work-life integration more than work-life balance is what my comment would be, and begin to bring in technologies in every aspect of your service and offerings, including buffets, including minor operating departments and what have you. And I'm sure as an industry we'll find a solution. Look, I may be sounding as if there's a crisis. I yet remain very optimistic. It's a mission for me as an educator to make sure that we make our industry attractive again. I will do it with my students, but it takes two to tango. If the industry and academia comes together we can make a better future for our talent.
Absolutely. More collaboration, right, you said, between hotels and the education institutes. The other thing that I would like to pretty much say and end on a note is with technology ever evolving and helping us with our day-to-day life, it being more of a boon, less of a bane. The other thing that I think that needs a radical change or evolvement is the cultural mind shift of the work-life integration, like you said, right, Ms. Dilip, because we need that cultural shift to say, yes, 9 hours is what I'm going to let you work and not more than that. You go home, you've done your day's bit. It's on to management and budgeting to ensure I have proper resources. And with that, I think we'll call it a wrap. There are some questions that we've had from our Q&A, which we will go back offline and share those questions back to the members who asked those questions. And with that, I will hand it over to our host, Baptist. Thank you all for an engaging session here. Some really good terms being coined that I will take away from here. And I really enjoyed this conversation with all our panelists here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karan. I second what Karan mentioned here, and there are really good points that we can take back, especially developing transferable skills and looking at cost per employee, and not looking at cost per employee, but rather looking at what's the revenue per employee. Also, having work-life integration, and those are some of the things that we'll definitely take back. A great thank you and appreciation to everyone who has attended this session, and the panelists as well. Thank you so much for taking out time and being part of this discussion. It was fantastic, and we hope to see everyone next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you.